tremble with joy to know that the one who has complete mastery over life and death, this is the one who values and loves you so much. Rejoice and tremble at the security of that kind of love, and do not fear the enemy.
My wife grew this. This is like real. She grew that and that, not these. Anyway, just thought you should know that.
Looking back over the last year, what kind of a year has it been?
It's been massive. It's been a massive, huge year. I think it almost feels like, 3 years, 4 years poured into one. Very, very content rich. Even as I go through my phone, and you're looking at photographs that I take when I show up places, I just take a lot of pictures. You're like, I can't believe we've done all of that in 1 year. I mean, Jesus said, you didn't choose me, I chose you, and I appointed you to bear fruit. And it's been an incredibly fruitful year. I mean, as a diocese, we have grown, according to the figures that we have, our average Sunday attendance has grown by 16%. I mean, that's huge. That's a really important piece of growth. It's not just that we've grown in number. It's Jesus also said, you'll know them by their fruits, and I think those fruits of love, joy, peace, gentleness, kindness, forbearance, and so on, all of that is so wonderfully entwined in who we are and what we've been doing. So, I'm up in Bangor, Maine, and we're literally fishing hypodermic needles out of a public water fountain in a bid to kind of bring beauty and to bring beauty back to the city and to love the city. Or I'm in Vermont and there's a banquet for 200 homeless people with fine white linen tablecloths and a Michelin-starred chef, and we're serving those people. That was just extraordinary. Or I'm in Franklin and in the rain, and we're prayer walking the city because in all of those things, there's a sense of we are compelled by the love of Jesus to do that. So it isn't just big numbers. I think it's the quality, it's the nature, it's how we're doing it as well, and that's just been beautiful and extraordinary. I mean, even to the point that this year I've been in some of the poorest, dustiest places in East Africa, and because this diocese has heard the cry of the hearts of people 8,000 miles away, we have been able to, in the love of Jesus, to support them with fresh water, water harvesting projects and so on. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's utterly extraordinary. So it's been a very, very fruitful year.
And children and youth have been a part of that fruitfulness. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, they have. Well, you know what? I think it's almost kind of a secret that's been kept, but in the diocese, we actually have a lot of kids and a lot of young people. I think it's absolutely right that children and young people should be constantly on our hearts, and we should constantly want more for them. But as we've kind of worked towards that, as we've reached out, we see a lot of children and a lot of young people. Not all, but many of our churches have increasing numbers of children and young people. And not only within the church, but they've become incredibly creative in how they kind of make access for children and young people. So we've had art camps, we've had farm camps, where kids are basically baking bread or drawing water from a well, or, feeding goats or whatever it is. We've had sports camps up in Portland, Maine. We've had kids engaged with all kinds of projects. When we've done regional awakenings, young people and kids have been involved. So at a local level, we're finding ways to bless and raise our children in the faith, but also to build bridges with kids and young people in the community. So that's been huge. At Reawakening this year, we had the biggest children and teen track that we've ever done. So there were 2 separate tracks, one for children, one for teens. I spent some time in the teen track, and it was beautiful because it really was like a microcosm of the entire diocese. So you walked in and there are kids from churches in Vermont, and also churches, say, from Massachusetts, some from our East African churches, or kids from Connecticut with kind of Hispanic roots. I mean, it's this incredible global family, and it was really rich. It was an amazing team who did an amazing job there. It was powerful. I mean, I got to pray for some of the kids, and the Lord was really a part of that, really present to them. So that's been wonderful. So I think we have all kinds of things, on the horizon for our young people. I mean, this year we had a middle school retreat that just could have been an absolute disaster because it could not have rained harder if it had tried. But the team were like, we're not giving up on this. And they actually made it the best middle school retreat we've ever had. So, and that says a lot, because that's kind of about a perseverance and a determination and a dedication to children and young people that we're seeing. So we've got a lot more work to do, but I'm really excited. And it's almost like you kind of suddenly look and you go, oh my gosh, we've got kids and young people everywhere. So I'm thrilled about that.
In terms of the diocese making space for the Holy Spirit and watching the Holy Spirit work, could you speak to that a little bit? How has the diocese made room for the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, I think it's a real priority for us. It's one of our key values that we continually make space for the Spirit to do what he does best, which is to bring people to faith, to deepen faith, to glorify Jesus. And I think maybe one of the principal ways this year we've seen that is through the Floodgate pilgrimage, where this very simple wooden cross made by our dear friend Mark Dennison up in Vermont, St. Timothy's, has gone over thousands of miles. I think it's about 3,000 miles from memory. Up and down, the northeast. We've put it in a suitcase and put it on Delta. It's been on the steamship company going out to Long Island. It's been everywhere. And where it's landed, almost like an Olympic torch, people have gathered and prayed. And we've had wonderful testimony. I mean, and it's left this path of prayer in its wake. So where it's been, people have been stirred to greater prayer. And that can only be the fruit of the Holy Spirit. That can only be by the leading of the Holy Spirit, that desire. So we've seen this, we've seen a desire to pray, and we've seen a lot more prayer. I also think we've seen the work of the Spirit, again, distinguished in the arts. And that's been so interesting, because there are things that we have done as a diocese that have really encouraged that. We have an AD&E arts collective, and so a whole broad range of people coming together to share spoken word, visual arts, music, and so forth. It's beautiful. But that also has arisen in many of our churches. Photographic displays, painting displays, painters coming in to talk about their work, people sharing their work. And that has a wonderful, that wonderfully produces fellowship, because I think there is something quite vulnerable when you share what you've made, what you've produced. I think that takes a bit of courage, but it's a wonderful thing when the community gets around it and says, that's beautiful, that really is wonderful. So that kind of builds trust and fellowship, but it's also a wonderful bridge for people who don't yet know Jesus, or maybe are at the fringe, to come in deeper and to be welcomed in. And again, when their work is valued, they feel valued. So I think other ways that we've seen the Spirit move, and I feel very blessed, I feel like I've had a front row seat here, is in the regional reawakenings that we've done. And we've done 3. Since we last met, we've done 3. We did one in Vermont, we've done one in Bangor, Maine, and then we did one in Franklin, Massachusetts. And that was just wonderful to see the churches kind of gather on the Friday evening, kind of joined around kind of an artistic kind of in reach, if you like, and prayer and ministry and teaching through that. And then the next day to actually reach out to the community around them. And again, that has to be a Spirit-led initiative. You don't do that without the leading of the Spirit. And it really is, it reminds me so much of the disciples who kind of go out and then they come back to Jesus and say, oh my gosh, you won't believe what we saw. And those weekends are just so full of that moment. People are like, oh my gosh, and Jesus did this, and Jesus did this. When we were in Franklin, Massachusetts, we were prayer walking, and one of the members of that prayer walk just had a real burden to go and find someone that she felt needed ministering to. She had met them, I think, once. But there was a sense of, I just need to go and seek them out and pray for them. And in a whole crazy set of circumstances, she ends up with a friend coming to this person's house, and he invites them both in, and she's able to minister to him, and he really needed some company and some encouragement in that moment. That's a beautiful piece of the Spirit's kind of leading and obedience, faithfulness on the part of our people. So the regional reawakenings have been wonderful. You know, we've had lobster banquets, art projects, prayer walking, fall festivals, just so much kind of creativity and bridge building. And then the Reawakening this year, I mean, that was almost 300 people. That's the biggest Reawakening conference we've ever had. And it was tremendous. I mean, the arts, again, were at the center of it. The preaching was really rich. The worship was extraordinary. People's heart to worship. I mean, they came ready to worship. It's almost like you kind of just lit the match, stand back. You know, it was really fervent.
There was also a new song that was sung at Reawakening. Can you tell, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk to you about that. Christ Will Shine. That was a beautiful kind of collective work. Many of our musicians got together. They had a worship retreat, and they wrote the song for Reawakening, for us, for the diocese, with Reawakening in mind. And then we were able to actually get it recorded. Dave Edwards kind of oversaw and produced that, and then actually brought it together in terms of the audio recording. And we even had a video as well. But that song really, I think, really captured so much of what the Lord is doing, that sense of his light shining into broken and hurting places and bringing healing and restoration. I really do. And if you listen to the lyrics, it begins as a prayer, a plea for help, and Jesus responds, and his light shines. So it was remarkable. And hearing people really sing it, not just, you know, kind of mumble along, but really open their hearts and enter into that song of worship was remarkable. I thought it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
The diocese has done a lot with leadership this last year.
Yeah.
Can you share more about that? How's the diocese?
Yeah, I mean, leadership is a really important gift, and we need to invest in that. And it isn't just our clergy, although they are profoundly important in this. It's also all, you know, our leadership within the churches generally. So I think missional planning this year, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that was the best one we've ever had. I really do. I think we've done this a couple of times now, and I think folks see that there is real value in seeking the Lord, and how do we put his vision into action, and actually praying that and working that through. And I think the evidence of that would be the number of people that each church brought to the conference. It wasn't just the clergy person, it was the clergy person, wardens, vestry members, lay leaders. It was a whole group. And that was a really, really rich time. Then we've had some wonderful warden and vestry days. We've had days where we've looked at conflict resolution, and people have really appreciated, you know, all of that. And then, of course, with missional planning alongside that, we have coaching and coming alongside leaders and really helping them grow in the gifts that they need to put the vision of God into action. I am thrilled. I visit churches. I walk into the office or a room where the vestry meets, and there's the missional plan on the wall, and things are like checked off and highlighted, and, you know, changes made, and it's an organic thing. It's a prayerfully led thing. It's just wonderful.
And there's been work that's been done in preaching as well, yeah?
Oh, yeah. This year we've also invested in preaching. That's been really significant. We've started these preaching groups. I think the clergy are really enjoying those. I think anybody who is called to preach, we have some really gifted preachers who are not, you know, ordained, but they have a significant preaching gift, and I'm glad we can release that. That's been tremendous. I think often when, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I think in the earliest days, you can kind of prepare your sermons a bit like this, you know, and then you bring it out on Sunday and hope it works. I think we can do better than that. I think theology is best We grow in it in community. We really do. I think it's something that should be shared in community. And I think, those safe groups where essentially we are helping each other to exegete the gospel. How do we pull out the gospel from a text? Is it either a piece of conviction that leads us to the grace of God, and in that sense of like everything is leading us to the cross of Jesus Christ. Everything is leading us to the love and the mercy and the grace of God. So how do we preach in a way that brings our people to encounter Jesus? And that's been really well received and is growing.
I wanted to ask also about how the diocese has taken initiative internationally as well. So in terms of its it's done more globally, with Uganda and Kenya.
I think we are growing. I mean, this sounds like a rather bold claim, but I say it with gratitude to how the Lord is leading us. But I think we are being shaped to have global impact and as a global leader. So, for example, there are many folk outside the diocese within the ACNA and further afield who are deeply interested in our leadership development and the missional planning and so forth, how we actually are doing that. So that's and overseas as well. So that's been very interesting to observe. And then in terms of kind of our global reach, we are a global movement of the Holy Spirit. We're called to the Northeast, but we're drawn from many corners of the world. And the Lord is kind of taking that gift and causing us to kind of follow the breadcrumbs, as it were, to kind of ride the thermals of the Holy Spirit. So we've had some amazing trips to Uganda and Kenya. This year we went back to Uganda. I can't tell you how powerful it is, in 2023, to go into Chibuku village, one of the poorest places I've ever been to, and recognize that they desperately need help with fresh water, and sense the Holy Spirit say, I want you to help these people. And you hear it clearly, but at the same time, in my flesh, I'm thinking, I don't want to raise an expectation that we can't meet. I don't want to promise something that we can't fulfill. How do we take this forward? And then you bring that need back to the diocese, and they respond in such a wholehearted way that by 2024, you're stood in the same village and we're commissioning the water harvesting project, and thousands of people's, their lives have been completely transformed. And one of the things that we learned, and they were courageous and kind of humble enough to tell us, but there would often be fights would break out at the water collection points they did have, because if you're lined up all day waiting for water, by the time you get there, there's none left, and you consider your neighbor took more than they should have done, you can understand how things get fraught. Well, now all of that has ceased, because there's enough water for everybody, and it's fresh and it's clean. So that was amazing. That was amazing. And in the same way, we were able to take gifts that were gathered from the heart of the diocese to the Potter's Village, where they're caring for abandoned babies, where they're caring for children, particularly premature babies are being cared for. It was such a gift to be able to bring the diocesan gift to that amazing work. So really quite tremendous. We did the leadership retreat that we did for Kampala Diocese. I was so proud of the team, and I think we were able to really bless them. But the thing is, we get blessed. I mean, that's the exciting thing, that when we get to the point where more teams from the diocese will go out, I know how blessed they will be to participate in what God is doing there, and to be amongst the family of faith in Uganda and Kenya.
If we were to continue to sow into this work, what would that look like?
Well, I'm really grateful for everybody who is sowing into this work. Our people have been very faithful in their church tithes. We are so much stronger when we come at this together. I think a distinguishing mark of a growing diocese, of any kind of move of God, is that we're working in faith. That there's always more that you need to put the vision of God into action. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. It keeps us on our knees. It keeps us praying. But again, I want to say, if, say, 500 people gave a gift of $500, on top of what they're already giving, which is a lot to ask. But that would actually result in, $250,000, and what we could do with $250,000 in terms of children and youth and global development and leadership development and so forth. I mean, it would be huge. We kind of made this challenge last year, and many people came forward and did that, and that was really a big part of us being able to grow into this year. If they hadn't done that last year, we couldn't have done half the things that we've done this year. So I'm really praying that everybody that helped in that way last year can do it again, and I really pray that more people could be part of that, because I think that's doable. I think, again, it's about, when we come together, we can do so much. We are so much stronger together.
Ethan Magnus had so much to say about the fruit of your work.
Yeah, Ethan Magnus was our guest speaker at Reawakening, and he's a very, very good speaker, and I would imagine is asked to speak at many different events. But he really was struck by the uniqueness of what is going on here, and I think that is what I want to communicate to people. There's something very rare and very precious and very pure that is going on in the heart of the diocese. In all our different churchmanships, the gospel-centeredness of all our worship and all our endeavors is really beautiful and really powerful, and it's rare. And Ethan Magnus actually said, oh my gosh, it's so rare to find all of this together in one place. So there is a moment to be seized. There really is something that is so worthy of being invested in. I'm so grateful to be sowing my life into this, and I know all our leaders feel the same, and everything else I can bring to it. So I would encourage us to kind of seize the moment, because, as Ethan and others have said, this is rare. This is rare. This is precious, and in a world that is confused, and in kind of the chaos and all the noise, it seems like the person of Jesus is kind of being obscured. We, by the grace of God, are being able to chart a very clear course to bring people to the person of Jesus.